You guys good to go? Good to go?
You guys good to go?
I'm gonna have to mute you. Oh, here we go. One more minute. Trustee Joseph, you all set? 1 minute. Thank you. You're welcome. Call to order the regular board meeting of April 14th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Here.
Treasurer Lafata.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Present.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Demink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg.
Oh, let me get.
Kathy's got to unmute.
Trustee Vosberg is here. Clerk Berry is here.
All members are present. There are no presentations tonight. Department reports. A couple very quick ones from me. One is, Trustee Vosberg, I'd be happy to hear this after years of requests dating back quite some time, but at least since 2017, Sugarbush Road will be getting a pretty substantial repaving, resurfacing project this spring till summer of 2020. You'll start seeing some work out there very, very soon. Approximately 8,600 lineal feet of Sugarbush Road will be resurfaced through the Michigan or through the Macomb County Department of Roads. So that is fantastic news. The sections are from Cotton all the way to 21 Mile, and then all the way along the new Southeast Michigan Veterans Facility for another approximately 4,000 feet on our way to Sugarbush Road. So that's a bit of good news. Green for Life pickup, yard waste pickup is going to be 1 day behind this week. They are anticipated to be back on schedule by the end of the week. They were on, or they were off for the entire region, and then they were back on to picking up yard waste, so be prepared. They will pick up your yard waste. They should have picked up Mondays today, and then they'll be just 1 day behind, but they will catch up with picking up the yard waste. And the last thing I did want to mention was the 2020 census. Chesterfield is doing a very good job with the census. There's still about 35% of our expected population that needs to take the census. This is very, very important. It happens once every 10 years, and every number means dollars back to this community. So it is very important that you fill out the census. So those are the ones that I wanted to touch base on. Any further board, Clerk Berry?
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. We'd just like to give some information regarding some misinformation that is floating around on social media regarding the upcoming May election and future elections for this election cycle. There's been a lot of discussion through social media about an all mail-in election. That is somewhat incorrect. First and foremost, Chesterfield Township does not have a May election, so that would not affect anyone living in Chesterfield Township. In fact, the only area where they have a May election is in a specific school board district in Warren. I believe it's Warren Woods are the only voters who would be affected by any changes to the May election. We are not. However, in the event that our August 4th state primary were to have the same protocols as the May election, it is not mail-in only. It is highly recommended that it be mail-in, and of course, there is no longer a reason to ask for an absentee ballot. However, if those protocols had to be followed, Chesterfield Township, like every other municipality as well, would still be required to provide one polling location for voters to vote in person. If that were to happen, again, if that were to be the case in August in Chesterfield Township, the polling location would be here at Township Hall. It would be up to the Election Commission to make that decision, but that would be the recommendation of the clerk's department and the clerk's office if that were to happen. Again, that protocol has not been directed at all yet for August, and May does not affect us. So I wanted to clarify that. I will also be putting out a short informational video regarding that information as well, so that there's no misunderstanding with regards to those issues that affect Chesterfield voters this election cycle. If there's any updates that you would like to get from the elections department, you can go to our website. Go to right on the front page, there is an elections button. You can click on that button and it will take you to all of the election updates for the balance of the year. Thank you.
Any further board?
Okay,
Trustee DeMank.
Okay, from the Leisure Services Division, as a precautionary measure to respond to the coronavirus, the senior center is closed and will remain closed in accordance with all executive orders. Projected scheduling is May 4th. That's up to the governor at this time. Registrations are being accepted for summer baseball and softball through May 22nd. Visit the website. Also, the Parks and Rec website for other things. And just to let you know, our local parks, trails, and spaces are always open and can serve you to seek peace and restoration. We encourage our residents to visit our parks, but adhere to the recommendations for distancing and everything else. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Any further board comments? Trustee Vosberg. Okay, let's move on to the consent agenda.
Item 6, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 6A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of March 31st, 2020. 6B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary, and we do have an addendum this evening. Item 6C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
A motion by Trustee Joseph to approve the consent agenda as submitted.
Second.
Supported by Clerk Berry. Discussion. From the virtual folks.
No.
No, I'm good.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, supported by Clerk Berry to approve the consent agenda as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
There have been no public comments submitted on the consent
Yes.
agenda via email.
Okay, you can call the roll. Please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
The consent agenda is adopted. Move on to the regular agenda, and before we bring this, public comments can be submitted online at www.chesterfieldtwp.org. We will immediately, the clerk will immediately get those questions, so if during the meeting any questions would need to be submitted, please go to our website. Item 7A.
7A, a recommendation for the Township Board of Trustees to award the Weber Paddle Park contract to the lowest responsible bidder, JSS Macomb LLC in the amount of $294,513, and to approve the total project cost of the Weber Paddle Park in the amount of $379,000. Funding for the project is $114,000 from General Ledger number 101265975 and $265,000 from the MDNR Trust Fund Grant.
Do I have a motion to approve item 17?
Move to approve.
Motion by trustee Vosberg,
Second?
second by clerk Barry. Discussion. We do have Mr. O'Connor and Mr. Sonnenberg here, along with Lou Urban on the virtual meeting here.
I have a question.
Okay, trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. In light of I'm still very much supporting this and looking forward to seeing it be finished. I noticed with the water levels being really high, does this plan still work for the possible high water levels that we could again have?
I'll turn over to Lou, and then Mr. Sonnenberg is here as well.
Kathy, as you know, this was an evolving process on this project. The last revision to the plan, we elevated the walking path, the parking lots, et cetera, so that we still would be out above the water surface elevation of the lake.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further comments from the board? Treasurer LaFata.
There seems to be some costing irregularities in the project. If you track the cost of the project from day one, which I have a whole binder full of project cost tracking. We spent in the neighborhood of $65,000. It seems on what's in the board packet, somebody drew a line and only counted the expenditures after 9/19/17. I don't know how it works in the public sector, but in the private sector, when you have a project and it's approved by the board for a number, which was in the resolution first in 2016 and then in 2017, you spend, that resolution is the enabler to spend funds. You track the expenditures against those funds. Second of all, there is an issue that there's still...
Treasurer LaFata, can you get a little closer to your microphone? Trustee Joseph cannot hear you.
Second of all, there's currently $12,546 that has been submitted for invoicing by AEW that hasn't been approved by our engineering department for payment yet. I don't know how that fits in the cost model. Also, my notes from the board meeting back on November 20th, 2017, if you look at the supervisor's agenda item, it was postponed from November 6th originally and reissued with the same wording. It says, approve or authorize Anderson Exton Westrack, AEW, to prepare the engineering plans, specifications, and necessary construction administrative services for the completion of the Weber Paddle Park. In this board packet, there's another item added for construction contract administration for $6,500 below the $1,550 that's in there. So I don't know how the accounting was done for this, but it doesn't look like it really adds up to what it should be, and it's kind of misconstrued. There's one other item, the diagram that's up there. Currently, the water is up past, or was yesterday, past the telephone poles, which means that walkway is going to be underwater because that's where the telephone poles are. But the current telephone poles were yesterday underwater. The base of them are underwater. So I don't know how, when we go in construction, how we take care of silt issues when we're moving soil, not to put them in the Salt River and create contaminants. But there's, like I said, there's a lot of irregularities, financial and engineering, that I don't think have been worked out yet. And the other thing is we're still looking at a depressed economic revenue in the next year. Thank you.
Thank you, if I would. That opinion, my opinion differs in the board packet, and I can take some time if you would like to pull up the entire agenda item, which I think is extremely, okay, well, if you'd like me to put it up on the screen for more people to see, I could take the time and do that, but I'm going to explain a couple of things. There is a breakdown in there of every cost to date. You mentioned a line drawn, and that line represents purchase of the property, and below that line represents implementation and construction. So you are correct, approximately $65,000 to date has been spent on the Weber Paddle Park property, of which $55,000 was a purchase-related type work, clearing out the old docks. A bunch of decisions were made 14, 15, and 16. That is everything above that line. And if folks at home go to page 59 of the agenda packet, they would be able to see that. Now, below the line, is what I would call the implementation of the construction-related costs. And since 2017, we're at $11,000. The breakdown on this thing is pretty solid, and Lou is on the line to discuss the chronology that was put together for the last 6 years for this project. And I personally am very, very happy with the amount of the bid. I'm very, very happy with the fact that we're going to be able to take advantage of a $265,000 DNR trust fund grant for Chesterfield, and take advantage of a $200,000 donation from a pretty solid and amazing philanthropist in our community. Almost $500,000 worth of donations to bring this park to a reality, and it will be beginning soon. And I'll move it over to further board comments, and I know Lou is on the line as well to answer questions, and so is Josh. And Rich. Any further questions from the board? Sure.
Yes, Mr. Supervisor, I appreciate your breakdown and also the data contained in the packet. As I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I'm also very impressed and appreciative of the new engineer that's been assigned to our township from AEW. Mr. Urban has done an excellent job picking up on this project that is many years old. And I have been an advocate for this park since Mr. Weber brought it forward and talked about making a paddle park a reality for our community. The difficulty I have tonight, and I really would like to get the opinion of other board members, is the fact that we are in the middle of a global pandemic. We are in the middle of what could be a devastating financial impact for our township for years to come. And so my questions and my concerns really have nothing to do with the presentation of the project at this point. I think Josh and his team, Mr. Urban, as I indicated 2 weeks ago, excellent presentation and renewed confidence in the stewardship of AEW.
David, if you could, make sure, I just got a text from Trustee Demink that he can barely hear you, so I think it's the same thing with these microphones. You got to get right close to them nowadays.
Okay. Hopefully that's better, and I'll try to stay close to the microphone. What I'm concerned about is not the presentation of the engineering or the work that's been done by Josh and his team, Mr. Urban, as I said, really restored my confidence in AEW, the way that he responded to Treasurer LaFata's emails and questions back and forth, and I mentioned that 2 weeks ago. What I'm concerned about at this point, and I would like some feedback from fellow board members, particularly those who are numbers people, Commissioner Trustee Vosberg, our Treasurer LaFata. We are hearing, at least I'm hearing, from the governor, Mayor Duggan in Detroit talked about today a concern about a $300 million deficit in the city of Detroit. In particular, 9,000 employees could be impacted with the financial hardships created from the coronavirus. These are things that we did not anticipate. Nobody could. And I'm worried that any non-essential spending at this point should be something that we take a real hard look at, and I would like to at least have that weigh into the dialogue and the debate that we have here tonight. I know that the amount of money from the general fund and the allocation for this project is roughly a third of the cost, and we're looking to recoup a number of dollars from the DNR trust fund grant. But the question becomes, with financial uncertainty, what is our position as it relates to any non-essential township spending today? I'm very, very worried, and I'd like to hear from some of our more astute numbers people on whether or not this is a worthwhile expenditure given our challenges and the challenges that we face not only today but for months and potentially years to come. So I'm very concerned about that, and I'd like to hear some feedback from those who are willing to put on the record their opinion on our financials. Any board members wish to comment on the financials? I definitely will, but I will, it sounds like you want to hear from the other trustees and Treasurer LaFata. Let's see if anyone else wants to go first to Treasurer LaFata before I move on. How about anyone on the line? Okay, go ahead, Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. That should be something of concern to us. I did listen in on a webinar today that was offered by SEMCOG. It was a panel discussion with people from U of M, economic experts who do forecasting for a living for the state, the region, and also federal government. They tied it all together, and they had scores of indicators, economic indicators that they used. And surprisingly, in a year's time, we will be back to 97%. It's their forecast that we'll be back to 97% of our economy, spending and income-wise. Income and spending-wise of all of those things that right now seem to be very up in the air. But because of the economic stimulus by the federal government and because by some other factors, I can't remember them all, that was very good to hear. And because of that, I don't have a problem going forward, because I think that to wait longer could possibly raise the cost of the project into the future. I think we need to do it now.
Any further comments? Treasurer LaFata, and then we'll go to myself on this one. I'm sorry. Let's go to Clerk-Berry first, then Treasurer LaFata. Clerk-Berry.
Thank you. Just very briefly, I think that every decision that we are making, we can't help but consider the current circumstances. However, in this case, I think that I would have to agree with that. I've read similar data, Trustee Vosberg, as you have. I did not sit in on the panel presentation that you were on today, but I have read several published articles from perhaps similar or the same experts and others as well. And what I read was that it's more likely that we don't have the economic doom and gloom that's been predicted, that all of us are fearing, that it's more that we haven't hit the stop button on the economy, that we have to restart it. It's more of a pause button. There's a lot of economic activity that is anticipated to resume once it's allowed to. In fact, overly so, were some of the comments that I read as well. But what I heard specifically, or read specifically, was that we haven't hit a stop button on the economy as so much as a pause. And I tend to agree with that analysis. It made sense to me. I'm comfortable at this time with our economic position in going forward with this project at this time, although I have had my concerns about it as well, some similar to Treasurer LaFata's, but I've had those concerns resolved since then, and I'm comfortable moving forward with a yes vote on this item.
Treasurer LaFata.
The University of Michigan study that was put out 2 weeks ago, not knowing the length of the shutdown for the economy, stipulated that the revenue for the state of Michigan could be reduced anywhere between 20 to 30%. If you look at the township's revenue sharing at roughly $3 million, at 20%, it's over $800,000. At 30%, it's $1.2 million. It won't hit the township this budget year. It will hit in 2021. That's when it's going to become critical. So if we're looking out for the future, we need to be cognizant of what we spend today. Also, currently, there's over 1 million employees in the state of Michigan that have registered for unemployment. It's 1 in 10 workers are out of work right now. They're not going to be spending on large ticket items. What they will be buying is necessities like food, drugs, pharmaceuticals. None of that's taxed. So the tax revenue from state sales tax is going to shrink. Also, still based on this, there's an expenditure that's been made, and I don't know how we book that and be transparent at the same time in telling the residents that we're going to do this project for the $378,000 when we've already spent more than that. It doesn't, you can't do it in the private sector. When you do it in the private sector, when you spend more money than you allocate or admit to, it's like cooking the books and you get fired. So I don't know how you do it in the public sector. I'm not really against the project. I'm against what the project is doing. It's taking expenditures and basically it's saying the expenditures didn't exist. Originally, the grant stated that work done by the township or the DPW could be used and allocated against the $114,000. So the DPW went out and they started clearing, removing any logged hours and money and everything else. And I'm sure Don and Kevin will tell you, so that when we got grant reimbursement, we could use some of that labor that was used earlier on that we're saying now we didn't spend any money on to use as part of the grant payment. I have every note, so I don't know where Supervisor Acciavatti gets his notes from, but mine are extremely accurate, and I'd be willing to compare them. And we still have the issues of outstanding engineering billings, and we have a charge in this fee for $15,500, but I don't understand where the other $12,546,000 fits in this puzzle. So there's a lot of financial irregularities. Like I said, it's not so much not having a Weber paddle park. It's so much of having a Weber paddle park at what cost, and what are we going to be transparent enough to tell the residents it really costs them? Thank you.
Okay, first I'm going to attempt to answer Trustee Joseph's question, and I know you didn't mention my name as being in the financial discussion, but today alone, and that doesn't even count the last month.
For clarification, you were.
Oh, okay, thank you. MML, MTA, conversations with the new CARES Act. So it's never ending, it's ongoing, and it's very, very dynamic. So every municipality in the country, and we'll just stay on the state of Michigan, and every government entity is going to be impacted by this differently. You brought up the city of Detroit. The city of Detroit is going to have a devastating financial impact, no ifs, ands, buts, or questions. And it's primarily because the city of Detroit gets revenue from the 3 casinos, and a substantial amount of revenue, which are closed, and which probably are going to have a huge revenue impact for that city moving forward. Chesterfield gets 0 revenue from the casinos or any entities like that, and every municipality's got to be looked at differently. And the city of Detroit also gets a city income tax. Chesterfield, again, does not get a city income tax. So the conversations today were how this is going to affect all of our budgets, and we have 6 of them. And so they're all very, very dynamic, and at the end of the budget, I'll have the end of this agenda with the addendum, I'll have a whole lot more to say on this. But our general fund, which is what this is funded out of, is primarily funded, approximately half of it, through constitutional revenue sharing. Again, we're just about 100% constitutional in that revenue sharing, meaning it spits out of a formula based on sales tax. So those projections are going to be down. In Treasurer LaFata, this will be a 2020 impact, not a 2021 impact. That is a fact. The June payment, which is our next revenue sharing payment, could be very shocking and devastating because of sales tax is not getting collected in February and March. And that number might be 50% below what it was expected. However, the long-term projections it's still a little bit too early to see how it's going to affect our general fund, which is what this project will be funded out of. Our general fund balance is approximately $10 million, very, very strong. Any decrease in revenue sharing, we can handle it. We are prepared for it. We're looking at each and every scenario. A couple meetings back, I did put a chart up that shows the increase in revenue sharing from the last 10 years was just about $2 million a year. We are in very, very, very strong position. I can't speak to all the other entities. State of Michigan is going to have a different set of challenges. I did spend a lot of time there as a member of appropriations, so I do know quite a bit about that. Their general fund is going to be devastated. However, constitutional money will not be touched, cannot be touched. This Michigan Department of Natural Resources is a trust fund grant, and that is constitutional. Did get an email that that money, reaffirming, is not even in the discussion. A lot of them is. So that's a kind of a snapshot just on the general fund piece of our budget. There are other budgets that are going to have different impacts, but I am very, very comfortable with the position that Chesterfield is in for our general fund, and I'm even more excited about the opportunity to take advantage of, by the time you get done with the gift of the property, a nearly $600,000 project where Chesterfield's going to be out of the pocket about a third of that. So that's a pretty exciting opportunity to see come to fruition. I'm not going to comment right now on all the other financial pieces that Treasurer LaFata brought up, besides the fact that I don't agree with any of those. And I did put up on the screen, if we did want to tear apart any of the specific information that is in the agenda packet. It's pretty clear. So, Lou, I don't know if any questions specifically related to the project. We do have Lou and Director Sonnenberg here to discuss those. And if you want to ask me some more financial ones, I'm probably the best person to ask. Any further comments from the board? We'll go to Trustee Anderson because he hasn't got to speak yet.
Right. Thank you. We're very beneficial as a township to have this family of the Webbers donate this property. Any other time, I'd see some support for this project. It seems like there is a very bullheaded attempt by this board majority to complete this project no matter what. At any other time, I'd say, hey, I'd like to take a look at it, but not at a time we got close to 1 million people on relief or seeking unemployment. What effect is that going to have on the budget of this township, the incoming money in the next couple of years? Maybe it won't crash this budget, maybe in the future. And I'm going to ask the one question of, are any board members, it's during a fundraising, did they accept money from this good family, and how much? Thank you.
Any further comments from the board?
Could I have that answered?
I'm not even sure. You asked about 87 questions there, so when it comes back around to me, I will do the best I can to answer your questions.
Anyone on this board, or do you have me cut off here? I just wondered if anyone on this board is receiving any donations through the years from this good family. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Joseph.
Trustee Anderson, I have received no campaign contributions from anybody associated with this project. The concerns that I have, I thought you captured very well, which were, I like the project layout, I like the work that Josh has done, I like the work that Mr. Urban has done, and I was very much in favor of this project. It's a good addition to our community pre-coronavirus. And I won't elongate my questions or concerns. A number of them have been answered. And I appreciate Supervisor Acciavatti, the distinction between the city of Detroit and how their funding is derived, both not only from casinos, but from their income tax. As I understand it, Kalamazoo, in a recent MLive article I read, talked about the distinction that you raised, which is communities that have a municipal tax and those that rely on property tax. The property tax communities, which is what we are, we don't impose a tax, are set to feel the impact at the 12 to 18 month mark, which puts us out roughly a year before we feel the full brunt of the property tax problems. The concerns that we're going to talk about later in the agenda, and I know just in some emails, correspondence today, I know we'll talk more about financials. I do not see this as an essential township expenditure at this point. And we will talk later about not only water rates, but also concerns that I have about our public safety and frontline people who are out that deserve compensation, and how are we going to pay for all of these things. And I'm concerned about any unnecessary or non-essential spending at this point. So not having anything to do with the project presentation, the work that's been done by the engineers or Josh and his team or Mitch and his team, but from a stopgap to the economic crisis I see us facing in the upcoming year or years as a result of this pandemic, I'm going to be a no vote on this project moving forward. Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I just happened to pull up one of the articles that I read. I hate citing, I wish I had had the cited article before when I spoke, but it came from the Morningstar financial group that does mostly stock analysis, and they had a very comprehensive article that they wrote an analysis from their financials, and I trust that their analysis is pretty accurate, especially when you read all of the details and the matrices that were used and so forth. But bottom line is, it says this, and I just wanted to, I think they summed it up pretty well. And what they said is, overall, we still expect a modest long-run economic impact, with GDP down 0.9%. This is much less than what is implied by the 20% plus drop in global equities since February. In our view, a COVID-19 recession doesn't fit the mold of a 2008-style recession with longer-lasting economic impact. Again, there's pages and pages and pages of additional information for individuals that are interested in that. You can go to morningstar.com is where I got it from when it came across my feed. So I thought that as far as the financial analysis goes, bottom line in this article, that while we will see an impact, clearly, it won't be significant, and it won't be as significant as we saw in 2008 with the recession that hit us then, which, as we know, took us about 10 years to come out of. So this is just one of the resources, but I think Trustee Vosberg cited a few as well. Just wanted to touch base on that and somewhat amend my previous comments.
Thank you. We're going to go see if Trustee Demink would like to make a comment.
Yes, I know this project's been a long time in coming. There's been a lot of work and effort put into it, the donation by the Weber family and everyone else. I understand times are tough right now, but we are also getting a lot of money from the state in regards to this. So at this point, I feel it's still a good move to move forward with this program, and I will be supporting it.
Thank you, Trustee Demink. A couple of questions that were asked, and I am letting some leeway go here. Property tax. Again, last meeting I spoke pretty depth. There might have been the meeting before. We can go back and watch it about property tax revenue. We are in a very, very strong position there as well in Chesterfield. The difference between assessed and taxable has got a very, very large gap. We are expecting, if there is an impact, it'll be 2023 and 2024. However, we are prepared, and we are in very, very good shape in Chesterfield there. Now, again, there's a lot of other communities that are not, but we are, and a lot of that is because of the work this board, the work that we did, the leadership team has done on the cost side. Very substantial changes in trajectory were made. It is campaign season, and I would expect this campaign finance question to be brought up probably every single meeting. And I want to make sure that I'm very, very clear. There is legal campaign finance and ways to fund campaigns, and there is illegal ways to fund campaigns. One of the reasons why I chose to run for this position is because of the culture of the illegal side of campaign finance. That's the problem. That's where the area is at, and that's where the issue is at. And I will not allow too much leeway during the next 6 months to try to campaign up here. I will answer that question this one time, which I just did. Campaign finance is legal. It's the people who don't have campaign finance that you really got to take a good hard look at. If we go up to the screen and we do want to run through all campaign finance, Trustee Anderson, who actually do it with integrity and legally, are submitted online.
We're talking about the Weber Paddle Park, and this is not germane to the subject.
I'm asking you a question.
When I get off, you are not germane to the agenda item.
What are you insinuating?
I'm insinuating
something.
Let's move on back to the topic. Whenever campaign finance gets brought up, I will answer it the same way. There's legal campaign finance and there's illegal campaign finance.
What are you insinuating?
You know the difference.
What are you insinuating?
I'm insinuating there's
Just like you said, you wouldn't answer the amount, sir.
They can't. The amount is online. It's legal.
You're putting that education to work. Thank you.
Let's move back to the agenda item there, Trustee Anderson.
Gladly. Illegal, legal.
I know which side you're on, sir. Okay, let's move back to the agenda item for the Weber Paddle Park project. There is some discussion on, and let's just cut the crap. There's 3 members of this board that have been desperately trying to kill this project since 2017. I would urge everybody to take a good solid look at the agenda item. First thing you're going to see is a detailed chronology of this project dating back to 2014.
He got that from me.
All the way
He
till
got
now.
that from me, or he wouldn't have it.
Great, I'm glad you participated in making this dream come a success for our area. So the next thing you're going to see here, once you get through all the details, all the work, all the teamwork, all the amazing partnerships to get us this far, is the very first action on this. Actually, there was action before this. This was in 2016 to move forward, expend the funds, $114,000 to the dollar, what we're asking for in implementation today, done in 2016. Again, unanimous support. Supervisor Lovelock, Hartman, Anderson, Bell, DeMink, Joseph. Unanimous in 2016. We come back in now this one even goes back to 2015. Now the dream of the Weber Paddle Park comes on. Here it is. Unanimous support from this board, and including 3 members that are currently sitting here today. 2 have been doing everything in their power to kill it ever since it got
You're
wrapped
not being
up.
very nice.
Well, I'm done with being nice. I'm done with being nice.
Data and you
So
give me
now,
sarcasm.
I'll get it to all your
I give you
data.
data,
So now
you give me sarcasm.
you can go
Why
after
don't you
me.
bang it a little harder, bang it a little louder, bang it a little louder, because you have the microphone,
I
and
do.
you dictate who talks. And
So
who
now
doesn't.
we go to
And you don't share the
2017.
time, because every other person, you negate what they say.
You're asking lots of questions I'm trying to answer.
not-
If you
I don't have
pay
to ask
attention to the board. So the next item was 2017. Now is when we started getting 1 nay vote, and that was Trustee Anderson, to proceed forward with this project, and I respect his position's been the same ever since. Now we move down. We're already moving forward with implementation. Here we are, going to take advantage of a $265,000 grant, going to fulfill the vision that was set forth in 2015 in a manner that is going to just, why hasn't Chesterfield taken advantage of more of these funds? So here we are with an opportunity to move forward with this project, and I'm very proud of this team. I'm very proud of the Weber family for donating it, the county for facilitating this, the engineer for, and here we are at the finish line. I am very comfortable with the financing behind this. Here's every penny that was spent on this project. You're correct, it's $65,000.
It's not all that's been spent.
These are your numbers. I'm going to turn the floor over to you one more time.
Okay.
And you can ask some legitimate questions to Lou or to Mr. O'Connor and Mr. Sonnenberg, who have been sitting up here listening to this for probably too long.
Okay.
I'm proud of this project. I was tasked with getting it built and getting it done. We're almost to the finish line, and you should have a Weber Paddle Park, if approved, by July of this year. Now, if you do deny it, and I know I know you've made it very clear for the last 3 years to kill this project, essentially you're taking not only the $65,000 on the table and throwing it away, now we have a piece of property that is maybe a liability. I don't see the logic in the flip-flopping, and I'm frankly done with playing the games. And I will turn it back over to whoever else wants to go back and forth on this, but that's a great ad for our community. It's well thought out. It was a vision from 2014, and vote like you're going to vote. I stand behind this project. I will move to Treasurer LaFata now, and I will not interrupt you like you interrupt me.
Thank you, Supervisor Acciavatti. I appreciate it. There are some invoices from AEW that have been submitted to accounts payable. 12/30/2018 for $6,475, that's not on that list. 5/8/2019 for $2,750, that's not on that list. 7/1/2019 for $1,200, that's not on that list. And another one on 11/27/19 for $2,121.50, not on that list. So that's $12,546 that there's invoices sitting in limbo right now So, and they don't show in the accounting for the $378,000 that were spent after this date that has the line through it. So my assumption is those invoices aren't going to be invoiced to the township because there's not going to be any money that's been approved to pay them, because if you add that in, it's in excess of $378,000. It's easy math. But those invoices exist. I have copies of them. So if they're in limbo and they are expected to get paid, this number needs to be adjusted, because I like to keep my accounting practices straight so that when I write a check, I know I did it based on good accounting practices.
Lou, if you would, if you look on the screen, you're going to see the total project budget and cost breakdown. Could you discuss this $15,500 with Treasurer LaFata and clear up any misconfusion he has?
I can try it. My internet connection was in and out, so I only heard part of that, and I'm not quite sure where the controversy exactly is. But we've made concessions on this project to maintain our original contract amount at $15,500 for the engineering portion of this. I believe the 12. I believe he said 12,000 was. I believe that money was in basically you can look at the chronology, the history of the project. I believe that the $12,000 was all the conceptual work over the years. I'm not quite sure if you could define that, Treasurer LaFata, a little better for me, what that 12,000 associated with.
Well, my question is the township going to get invoiced for it? Because if it is, then this number of $378,000 isn't correct. And I like to use good numbers moving forward, because if it's not correct and the invoices do get submitted, I don't sign checks.
If I may.
Yeah, please.
On the total project cost, which is January 2017 through current.
That's over here.
In January of 2017, the township authorized AEW to do the topographic survey and mapping fee, which is $4,450. So that's been paid. In November of 2017, the township board authorized a design fee of $15,550. Approximately $5,000 of that has been paid. Once this project gets awarded, then the remainder, the balance of the $15,550 will be invoiced and due. So after tonight's meeting, if it gets approved for award, then AEW will submit an invoice for approximately $10,000.
And that number is right here on the fantastic total cost project sheet that you put together, correct?
Right. That, not everything on that sheet has actually been paid. Some of that is in process of being paid.
Correct.
The first item is the award amount tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, the second item is 10%. That's a contingency. It's an industry standard. The replacement sign has already been paid. The topographic survey and mapping has been paid. About 1/3 of the design fee has been paid. And that was awarded again at the November 17 meeting. The wetlands restaking, that was also paid.
So if 1/3 of it's already paid and there's $15,000 into that, in other words, we're not going to get invoices for these numbers.
No, we're going to get an invoice for a total of $15,550, of which...
On top of what we've already...
No, of which about $5,000 has been paid, just over $5,000 has been paid since January 2017. So we're going to owe them the difference. And that's what that $15,550 represents. That was the design fee awarded at the November 2017 board meeting.
So I'm assuming that all the invoices that are being held right now for our township engineering approval is going to be
Reconciled to that $15,550, absolutely.
in other words, somebody's going to take all those back and they're going to...
It's being done. We're in process doing that.
Yes, that was part of, I mean, just, I don't mean to jump in, I'm just jumping real quick here. I know there's been a lot of debate with this project, and I know for the couple years that I've been here, we've got handed a couple projects that have just been messy from the start. And we've got put in these projects and we're cleaning them up. And I know from a public-private standpoint, I know my background, before I started here, we managed about $17 million a year annually in construction with 8 people. And we did a fine job doing it, so I know we're bringing some of those, the way we managed our private practice into the public practice. We don't come here every day and speak to the good stuff we're doing, but I know when it comes to these grants, they're really tough to get. And I know for the short while we've been here, we've been fortunate enough that we're trying to close this one out. We're trying to secure the one for Brandenburg. And I know in the future, that funding might go away and it might not be available. But I know with the people that were on these teams, especially at Brandenburg with our weekly calls, they're pretty confident, and we're all as a team, that these grants are still coming through. And any construction project I've ever been, when you have matching funds or donated funds, you go after that money and you get it. Good times or bad, it's smart money because you don't always have those contributions. And what happens here is we become good stewards on these projects and we do these projects right, like the wall is a perfect example. That wall sat for some time. There was people willing to do things with that wall. The problem is they didn't have the right conduit to get that stuff done. So we sat down with them, we re-energized that group, we got the wall done. We're trying to do the same thing with the Weber Paddle Park. Our fire station. Our fire station coming
Let's
along.
try, I have let this go
I'm sorry.
way off track, but we are now right on the finances. So Treasurer LaFata, Mr. O'Connor, are you comfortable, at least with answering your question? I know you're not going to be comfortable, but the 15.5, the number is in this. This is one of the best put together agenda items I've seen. Thank you, Mr. O'Connor.
We're not going to see any invoices for any more than 15.5 on this project, which means the 12,000 whatever is sitting in limbo is going to be reconciled.
Correct.
Because that number and whatever was paid doesn't equal 15.5. The only other thing that I don't understand is all the previous expenses that we've done based on the fact that the township thought that they were going to be able to utilize township labor and in lieu of the $114,000 has now been put by the wayside because we're negating, we're not going to admit that we spent that $54,000, and we're just going to ask for the new amount moving forward, which still isn't good accounting practices. And if the township really wants this and they wanted to take and make this $378,000 whole by adding the whole amount of $54,000 and approving that, it would be more transparent to the residents knowing that this is what it costs the taxpayers. I won't speak anymore. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It is very important to look at this sheet, page 59 of the agenda packet. This is every dollar, and I think it's undisputed, even from that was spent. Hold on, you said you oh, perfect. It's the finance department's list. Either way, I thought you promised that you weren't going to speak anymore.
Well, but you keep using, that's fine.
Well, you asked a question, I'm going to explain it to you. So,
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to call the question.
that is a non-debatable motion. We have a motion to call the question by Clerk Berry.
Mr. Supervisor,
That is a non-debatable motion. We have a motion to call the question by Clerk Berry, supported by Trustee Vosberg. Clerk Berry, call the roll on the call of the question.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
no.
Trustee Anderson.
No.
Treasurer LaFata.
No.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Item 7A, we have a motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Clerk Berry to approve item 7A as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Anderson.
No.
Trustee Joseph.
No.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
No.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Lou, thank you so much. You're more than welcome to stay on the meeting, but I might put you in the waiting room.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no, go ahead. You have anything else?
I just wanted to say thank you for the kind words from the board, and I look forward to, and I know it's controversial, but I look forward to finishing this project. We'd like to see it through, and thanks again for choosing AEW.
Thank you. Item 7B.
Item 7B. approve a recommendation by Public Works to purchase a sanitary sewer lift station pump from Kennedy Industries at a total cost of $29,651 from GL number 591-000-140.002.
So moved. Support.
Motion by trustee Anderson, support by trustee Demink. Discussion, and Director Coddington is here.
Just a quick go-over on this pump. Sugarbush Station is one of our stations that only has 3 pumps. Although it does have 3 working pumps in it right now, none of them are grinder-style pumps that help grind up the wipes and everything else that's coming in. These pumps are they're older. Most of them have been rebuilt at least once. I want to purchase a new pump, put it in the station, pull out one of the good working pumps to save for a spare. But mostly, we're going to be able to put an impeller that helps chew up some of this debris that keeps bothering our stations, and that is the major reason I want to order this pump and get it in the station.
Thank you. Any questions for trustee Anderson?
Yes, sir. Director, I just wonder, especially at the time we're going through now, I've heard some really strange stories of what people are putting in the sewers because of shortages of various materials. Is there any advice you want to give to the public as to what should be going in the sanitary sewers from the residential area, or what shouldn't be?
Yes, I'd love to speak on that. We are having a lot of problems with, please, the only thing that you really should flush is the toilet paper, not any of the disposable wipes. They're disposable, but they are not flushable, and they do not break down, and they do cause us a lot of problems, and Macomb County a lot of problems. And by the way, the amount of debris that are coming into the stations are up well over 100 to 200% of normal. So please don't hoard the toilet paper. Let everybody get a little bit, and let the people use toilet paper instead of having to flush other things in the sewer. Please don't flush the wipes. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? And we check in our virtuals. Motion by trustee Anderson, support by trustee Demink to support item 7B as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor, and I would like to state for the record that there have been no public comments received on agenda items 7A or 7B.
Thank you.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Thank you very much.
Motion passes. Item 7C.
Item 7C is to approve a recommendation from Public Works to authorize Supervisor Acciavatti to sign an agreement with the Macomb County Department of Roads to participate in the 2020 Dust Control Brine Program for county roads in Chesterfield Township, and allow the supervisor to order additional applications at $11,730 per application, not to exceed 3 applications if necessary, from GL number 101-446-929.
Do I have a motion? Motion by trustee Demink.
Support.
Support by trustee Joseph. I think,
I think I got her on the delay.
Yes. Treasurer LaFata, Director Coddington is here, if you have a question.
I see we do this annually. Do we do this on the same roads year after year?
Well, yes, we do.
If I could, if you ask the question, I'll try to answer it for you if you would like. Do you want an answer or not?
Not right away.
Okay.
You could just speak into your microphone, we can't hear you down here.
I just asked if we use the brine on the same roads annually, year after year. I'm just wondering if there's a reason, and I understand, but people that have asphalt roads don't get brine service every year. They don't get anything. I'm wondering how this fits in the overall picture. I understand nobody likes dust and anything like that, but I mean, there's a lot of roads out there in Chesterfield that need fixing, and the only way they get fixed is the residents have to pay for half of it based on an assessment. And I'm just wondering why, if we're doing this, I understand it, why the residents, if it's the same road year after year, wouldn't be assessed half the cost of the brine. Thank you.
I'll take a shot at that. We have about 15 miles of gravel roads. One of my first asks were to re-gravel our roads. Hence, we got involved in the Macomb County re-gravel program. These are primary roads. There's primary paved, primary gravel, and subdivision roads. So the confusion is subdivision streets require a special assessment district. Primary streets are a different funding mechanism, for example, the mile roads. So our gravel roads are generally not SAD-able. You will see, well, for starters, this is free for 2 applications, and the ask is for if additional applications are necessary because of a dust issue on some of our 15 miles of private roads, I commend them looking forward. And then instead of, hey, we need brine now, instead of, waiting 3 meetings and going to the board, they're pre-approving that if necessary, like in the past. Now, the good news is, as these roads get re-graveled, you're going to see less dust. The new limestone road is going to replace, frankly, a mud road or a dirt road or a dust road that have not been built since the 40s. So I personally anticipate that the brine will maybe, if it's needed in other applications, going to be on the roads that haven't been re-graveled. We did approve a couple meetings ago 3 more miles on the northeast piece of the township. Within the next couple of years, we'll have every single gravel road in this township repaved, and I am very proud of that work that was done in a very limited piece of time since 2017. So there's a major distinction between primary roads and subdivision roads, and that might be part of your confusion. Any further comments from the board? We have a motion by Trustee Demink, support by Trustee Joseph, to approve item 7C as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Mr. Supervisor, there have been no comments received via email on item 7C. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes. Thank you, Director.
Thank you.
Item 7D, and I do have Assessor Babbitt on the phone, or on the video. Clerk Berry.
Item 7D, approve a request by the assessor to adopt Resolution 2020-13, number 1, and Resolution 2020-14, number 2, and set the date for a public hearing for April 28, 2020, regular Township Board meeting at 7 p.m. for the purpose of hearing any objections to the petition, the installation of said proposed improvements, and the creation of a special assessment district, therefore, for the proposed establishment of a special assessment district, SAD, for installation of road paving improvements on Edgewater.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Clerk Berry. Support. Support by Trustee Joseph. Discussion. Private road, 100% filling of prescription from the residents of Edgewater, and we'll be back for Resolution 1-2, the public hearing 3, 4, 5, 6. Any questions for Dean or Mitch? Pretty straightforward. Any comments from the, kind of like the other method, I turn it over to you and then you Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Joseph. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Mr. Supervisor, there have been no public comments received on item 7D. Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Aye. Motion passes. Oh, I guess I did have the wrong item up there. That's the one that passed. Addendum, was it addendum tonight, Clerk Berry?
8A, the addendum, a request from Treasurer LaFata to continue the current water and sewer rates without increases through July 1st, 2021.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Anderson, to support a request, or the request as submitted. Discussion. Clerk Berry.
Mr. Supervisor, I think that this is a great thing that we could do for our residents, and I fully support this in concept. My concern is that the data that we really need to make an informed decision on this, if I'm remembering from past years, it seems like we normally approve water rates either in June or July, and I think the reason why, in putting the agenda items together in the past, was that the information didn't come in from the appropriate agencies until, I think, next month, May, June, maybe. And I saw that we had some information, but I don't think we have all of it just yet. And as I had stated before, I believe in this environment that we're looking at and that we all find ourselves in, we really need that. I feel as if myself, as a voting member, needs that. I would really like to see that before supporting this item. I would be interested in perhaps a motion to postpone this item until we receive that information, perhaps the first meeting in June. If we do receive it, if we don't have the information by then, I would look to even postpone it a little bit later, but I believe we get that information in May, if I'm not mistaken. So we should have it by the first meeting in June.
Motion to postpone by Clerk Berry. Is there support?
Mr. Supervisor, Mr. Supervisor, point of order.
Motion by Clerk Berry. It's a debatable motion.
No, it is.
It's a debatable motion. Motion by Clerk
It's a
Berry.
parliamentary procedure. It's the maker of the motion. I should be afforded the opportunity to speak on the motion.
You're going to be. You're going to be.
You took Clerk Berry before. It's out of
You
order.
speak like crazy right now, so.
No, before you start gabbling like a shoe cobbler, I'm saying to you.
Would you like to speak?
Yes, I would.
Okay, speak.
Thank you.
Floor is yours.
As the maker of the motion, I should be afforded the opportunity to speak on the motion first.
Speak.
It's
I
very...
didn't see.
Clear? There's no dispute in that.
Council, Mr. Supervisor, can our council weigh in on that, please?
We need counsel. We need counsel to weigh in.
I'm not really sure what his question was, but you can ask your
I'd like to
question.
speak. I don't have a question for counsel. Trustee Vosberg spoke out of turn, and she's now directing the meeting. I'd like to speak, if I may, before you start cobbling.
Please do.
Thank you. The motion was made. I should have been afforded the opportunity to speak first. That's basic parliamentary procedure. And the concern that I have is you allow quick trip opportunity to stifle speech. The amount of time that we're spending calling the question and shutting down deliberation is really concerning tonight, and then you did it again on this motion. The concern about water rate increases and the motion that was brought forward tonight was to simply say, in the midst of uncertainty and all of the financial hardship faced by our residents, we will not raise water rates. It's very straightforward. We know with relative certainty what the rates are. This idea that we have no idea what the rates will be, and so we wait until June. We know what the rate increase projected will be. It's not an issue about what it is. It's about the enterprise fund currently sitting at roughly, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of $13 million. And rather than hitting our residents with another tax, another way of going into their pocket, we heard tonight all of the money that we have in the township coffers, and we can spend money on anything that we want to spend on because we're solvent and we're good and we prepared. And to simply say that we won't raise taxes, we won't raise rates, was the spirit behind this motion. And I support that. And so that's why I offered the motion, and it was supported immediately. We're simply asking that we won't ask for more money from our residents right now in this uncertainty, that we have sufficient funds in the enterprise account to satisfy any rate increase, and we know with some certainty what that will be. And so the motion is sound, it's right, and instead of raising expenditures and taxes on our residents, we simply say we won't do that. That was the spirit of this, and that's why I asked for it.
Thank you, Treasurer Lefada.
Well, if Clerk Berry would have looked at the information that was put out by Mr. Coddington, Vicki Bauer, and Kevin Johnson, it actually has the water and sewer rate documentation in there, and it has the values of increase for both of them, that total $230,000. But if you read the information, you wouldn't have stated what you did, which really upsets me, because when Supervisor Acciavatti puts out a motion, he gets to read all the information that's out there before somebody cuts him short. I think it was very impromptu of you to do that. The other thing is somebody put in there, in this wonderful finance document that was put out to all the board members, and there's some red in there. There's $3,252,000 into capital costs that are put in there for 2020, 2021. Since 2014, the amount spent on capital improvements based on the Plant and Moran audits have always been less than the depreciation that's added back into the cash balance of the enterprise fund. The residents have been paying into the enterprise fund, it's around $13 million plus, every year, so they can cover this $3.2 million. The money's there. It's not like it's not. The money's been put in the bank by our residents when they pay their water and sewer bills. The depreciation's in there. It's cash. It gets rolled back in on the Plant and Moran audit. So this document might be accurate as far as capital, but where the money should be coming from is it should be coming from the bank right now, which is the enterprise fund, because it hasn't been spent in the past on capital improvements. It's not like we should be asking the residents for that much more money. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to go to Trustee Vosberg, or who hasn't ordered, Trustee Anderson first, and then I definitely going to want to speak on this one, which I haven't yet, and then I'll go back around for round two. Trustee Vosberg or Demink?
But I raised my hand, did you see it in the queue?
Oh, I did. I see it now. There you are.
All right. What's the motion on the floor right now?
Motion to postpone. We are going to have to clarify what date to, by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg.
Okay. I support postponing because the document that was put on the agenda was put on, I think, yesterday. The cover document does not show any review by the Finance Department. I realized there was some emails sent around today that had somewhat of that, but it's of the nature, it's an admirable thing to look at. I support looking at it. I support the concept. It'd be great if this is something that's doable, but we need to have a little deeper dive into it, in my opinion. So for that reason, I support the postponement.
Trustee Demink or Trustee Anderson, then we'll go to myself, and then we'll go for round two.
I also agree to postpone this for a bit. I think there needs to be some more looking into it. Everything came out yesterday as an addendum. It's It's got some great ideas. I've also kicked around the ideas that we should let the residents know, or if we have to do it as a board, to forego any late fees or penalties at this time due to the current environment. And, if they need to have a problem, they can contact DPW and we can move pavements out. I mean, that's what all the other utilities are doing at this present time, and I think that's a great idea. That was my comment.
Trustee Anderson.
Thank you. When we had the past board, we had the Sewer and Water Committee met, and for, I believe it was 2014 and 20 through 15, there was no additional assessment. Well, that was worked out because the pass on to the residents was quite costly. So as I recall, the township didn't assess any increases at that time on those water and sewer rates to the residents. As stated by Mr. Joseph, it's over $13 million in their money that they've paid as an add-on every user for water and sewer. And especially with this economic times, although I've heard tonight how it's going to bounce back so beautifully, still waiting for that one. I can't see where it give our residents a break here. I mean, it's not going to kill us. It's not millions. It's a few. Mr. LaFave has already explained it. I cannot see why we can't do this pass on to our residents tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple of major concerns, mostly with the timing of this. And if three members of this board and I actually had a relationship where we could communicate and where they participated, they would get a lot of the information that I'm going to share with you right now. So this is one of those funds. I specifically didn't touch base on it. This is an enterprise fund, and it's a very large one. We touched on general fund earlier and our public safety fund. This water and sewer fund is an enterprise fund. Discussions that are going on right now related to, for starters, the timing of this. The timing can be seen as nothing more than political in nature, and that's primarily due to the fact that we don't have the data. So we did just get two pieces of data, literally one just today, and that's the sewer increase and the water increase that will be coming from Great Lakes. However, there's another very important piece of data, and it's very, very important, and that is why this is done in March, in May and into June. Our water rates stay into effect until July 1st, so we're 3 months early. And the piece of data that we need is usage. Great Lakes Water Authority charges 6% of all of their water customers on a fixed fee. 40% of that is a adjustable fee. We have no clue, and again, it's going to be different per municipality. I'm pretty comfortable that we're going to have a negligible difference there. Restaurants are using a heck of a lot more water. Homes could be using more, and restaurants are using less, or industrial facilities are using less. Our sewer rates, and these are the expense side of the ledger, are 100% fixed. So regardless of the income we get in, those two numbers of usage are going to affect this big time. The next very significant piece is the CARES Act. CARES Act number one did not account for this, and it's $150 billion to local agencies. There's a CARES Act 234 running through the federal government right now. Conversations today with MML, MTA, the budget office, and high up things to what a better way to have stimulus than to go into water rates and users that are very, very highly impacted by this. We don't know information. The timing of this is nothing more than political, because if we do nothing, the water rates stay where they are. So let me say that again. If we do nothing, the water rates stay where they are. This action is unnecessary. And not only that, it could very well be maybe there's going to be a cut. We don't have the information. So for that purpose, and for the purpose of the lack of participation, and the fact that it comes across and you ask the CFO, the finance director of this organization, and the water and sewer director, engineer, and assistant water and sewer director who work around the clock on the 230-plus miles of sanitary sewer and the 250-plus miles of water main, and to maintain that system, and we ask them, I say, what do you think of this? And they didn't know about it. No finance, no DPW. The item is ridiculous, the item is political, and I think it should...
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Well, I do take a little bit of a difference of opinion. I don't think it's a ridiculous item. I actually really like it. I would love to be able to do it, and I want to be able to vote yes on it on June 9th. First off, the reason I spoke before was because I was recognized by the chair. I don't think I jumped in before being recognized, and I apologize if I did. And I did look at all of the information in the packet. It just was not what I was used to looking at in the past when we made these assessments, and I was on the Water and Sewer Rate Advisory Board as well as a founding member, so along with Trustee Anderson and the rest of our members. So I'm not terribly unfamiliar with this. I just felt as if there was still a lot of moving parts and pieces missing, and that's why I'm asking for the postponement and why I feel comfortable going in that direction as opposed to taking a vote on it tonight. And that's why I would ask for support on the postponement.
Can I get a date certain?
I would like to ask to make the motion to postpone until June the 9th.
June, the first meeting in June.
The first meeting in June.
Continued support, Trustee Vosberg?
Yes.
One clarification, the ridiculous comment was only that if we're not going to raise water rates or adjust them, you don't have to do anything from this board. So all I'm saying is this motion, this action, the fact that you need to make a statement that you don't need to do any, if you don't want to do anything, then you don't do anything and the rates stay where they are. Treasurer LaFarda.
Unfortunately, I don't know if you know, but we have the document from the County Drain Commission with the increase. We have the document from Great Lakes Water with the increase. So we do have the documentation that tells us how much the water and sewer rate increases are. So I don't know where you get your information, but I have two physical pieces of paper that are final, and they were sent to the township, and they've been published. So we have the one for the sewer, we have the one for the water. So when you start telling people we don't have enough documentation, we have the documentation, we have crunched the numbers, we have looked at how it affects the budget for the fiscal year. So there's a lot that's been done. The finance director went through all the numbers that I had, couldn't find anything wrong with them. I'm, pretty decent with numbers. It would be, there's a lot of psychological stress involved in what's going on, and we thought it might be a good idea to tell the residents that we are supporting them, we've got their backs, not 3 months from now when this might be somewhat subsiding, but now when they need some kind of reinsurance that the township wants to do something to help them, not 3 months from now when it might not mean as much. And it's not political. I don't care if I get elected again to be treasurer, and I don't take campaign donations from anybody.
Try not to campaign up here, okay?
Well,
This is a business meeting. Just try not to campaign.
You kind of cut it in there, so I'm just going to, because I don't take campaign donations, you kind of mentioned that those are the type of people you have to look out for. I purposely do it so that I'm not...
Do me a favor, try not to campaign up here, okay?
I'm not...
This is a business meeting.
Well, it's a business meeting, but somebody brought up the campaign and you reiterated on it.
Do not campaign up here. I like the ones, do not campaign up here. This is a business meeting. This is a business meeting, please.
It's a business meeting.
It's a business
But you're the
meeting.
one that
Stop.
rolled in.
Stop.
Did you not bring up this was a campaign stop?
Get back to the business of item
No,
8A,
I didn't
please.
bring up anything about campaign. You're the one that did. I'm just trying to clarify that it's not.
Get back to item 8A, please.
I didn't. You brought up campaign.
Get back to item 8A, please.
Oh, that-
Are you done?
No, I'm not done.
Okay, then speak about 8A.
So, the fact is, there's enough data for everybody to understand on the board what we're not going to receive if we don't increase the water and sewer rates. And I can understand if the board doesn't want to make the residents feel warm and fuzzy, that we have their back, and we understand that they could be going through a hard time. That's fine. There'll be another 4-3 vote like everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. At the end, I will talk about the COVID and our responses and all the actions, but for this, I'm just going to talk about item 8A.
Mr. Supervisor, could I get a
No, you may
round
not.
two?
No, you may not. No,
have
yeah,
to.
round two. But I had a direct question on me. I will come to you right when I'm
It's the
done.
third time you've spoken round two, sir.
I'm getting a lot of questions put on me, so
Okay,
please.
so this is round two, letter F for you. Okay,
I
thank you.
will recognize you again. Okay, so...
Before the question is called, because that's the
Please,
other
I
stuff.
do not interrupt you, and I don't interrupt Treasurer LaFato.
No, you have your subordinates call the question.
You know what? Please. Treasurer LaFato, I appreciate your passionate speech in the waiving of two things. So yes, we do know the increase for water and sewer. One is 1.7%, which is the sewer rate, which we got today from Macomb County, and we do know the increase from GLWA at 3%. Now, those are expense sides of the equation, so it's a little more complicated. A balance sheet has two different sides. One is expense and one is revenue. So yes, we know the expense side with variables. And the important part is the revenue side to determine impact on a budget. So I'll say it one more time. The water use is what is being discussed right now with GLWA and with every municipality in the region and in the country as to if water use goes way down, 100% of our sewer cost is fixed. So you don't have the most important piece of the data, which is what this event is going to do for water use. Very, very important piece of the data. And we also don't have the important piece of the data as to whether if, in the form of stimulus, in CARES Act money, 1, 2, or 3, another $250 billion moving through the U.S. Congress right now, will have on this budget. So I do believe this is a political move. The residents it'll be very clear that the recovery and reopening of our economy, which is what we're focused on, and lessening the impact to the residents is going to be first and foremost on all of our minds. That can happen in water rates, the water rates. It can happen in other ways here as well. But without the data and without an important piece of the data, which is water use, and in this other piece, this is premature, and it frankly would be a fake promise and with fake numbers because we just don't know. So hence, by June 9th, which I support postponing to that date, we're going to have a heck of a lot clearer picture. And we're also going to have a lot clearer picture when it comes to the general fund from revenue sharing. We're going to have a heck of a lot clearer picture when it comes to our police and public safety fund. And then we'll be able to have a real discussion about lowering property taxes. And we are in a very strong position to continue down that trend. Any further comments from the board? I'll go to Trustee Joseph for round two.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'd just like to point out before I start my comments to say, as it relates to your comments about COVID and the recovery, I've shared with you personally, I am very supportive of the work that you've done in that area. We entered this COVID problem with you and I at a bit of loggerheads on a number of issues, and I've reached out to you to say that I support you in this crisis that our township faces, and I have really zero issue with your stewardship leading this township in this crisis. So I'd like to start out by saying that because in this area, I saw this agenda item that was brought forward as an addendum as an opportunity to contribute to the relief for our residents. And I'm perfectly okay with exactly what you laid out, saying if we do nothing, the rates will still not go up. We're not going to impose any additional hardship on our residents. My problem is the way that we debate these things, it starts out in a very argumentative way. And my frustration as the maker of the motion was it seemed like it was a choreographed move to postpone, and then from a parliamentary standpoint, and again, I say this just in terms of avoiding potential conflict, we have debated now for roughly 15 minutes the original motion, yet there was a motion that was made and seconded to postpone. We're supposed to be debating the merits of the postponement, yet we're debating the motion as a whole. So from a parliamentary procedure, I wished I would have had the opportunity to be heard first as the maker of the motion, and for any member of this board, including Trustee Vosberg, who sat on boards for decades, the maker of the motion typically gets the first opportunity to introduce their support, and then the chair will take in random back and forth opposition and support if it can be discerned. That's typically how you have debate. We launched into a free-for-all. And in the interest, as we are self-insured, I don't want to see you end up with a carpal tunnel from excess gaveling. There's no need for that. We can have spirited debate without raising our voices and getting frustrated. I'm okay with the motion to set this out. The spirit of this was to simply say, as we approach what we know to be rate increase season to our residents who are struggling, to 1/10 of the population, and an argument can be made for even higher unemployment numbers than that in Chesterfield Township you will not be burdened with an additional increase in your water and sewer rate. I think that was a noble thing. If there's members of this board that wish to have a deeper dive, I respect that. And in the safeguarding of the discussion, while we're discussing it, while we're doing a deeper dive, there's no additional rate increase. That's really a win-win. How we manage to have such a heated, political and the campaigning and all of that, I don't know. It was as I saw the email, as everybody else saw the email today, I thought it was raised with a good intention to simply say to our residents, we're not going to raise the rates of your water and sewer in the midst of a pandemic. We have the ability in our enterprise fund to absorb whatever that may be, and so don't worry about it for the foreseeable future. There's no rate increase. If that opportunity still affords us in June, I'm okay with that. But let's have an honest discussion so that people can be heard. And what happened on an agenda item previously is there was an opportunity to have discussion, and people, I called the question. And it sends the message that this board is going to completely remain in a 4-3 lockstep, and it's not good. Let's have some discussion. I've tried my best to refrain from anything that would result in you gaveling me. I support you, and I like the debate. I like the discussion. But when we get into assertions that things are ridiculous or campaign-driven, it just is gas on a fire, and we don't need it. And we can do better than that. And again, I understood the spirit of your motion. I just wished I'd had the opportunity to speak first. That's typically customary in a parliamentary procedure that the motion maker can speak first. So I apologize for getting upset with you, Clerk Barry. But again, if the intent of the board is to say we're not going to raise rates, and we'll look at it a little bit more closely as we approach, I'm good with that too. Thank you.
We have a motion by Clerk Barry, support by Trustee Vosberg, to postpone item 8A into the June 9th, 2020 meeting. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Mr. Supervisor, for the record, we have received no comments via email on item 8A. On the motion to postpone to June 9th, Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee DeMink.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Treasurer LaFata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion unanimously passes. Thank you. Item 9 is public comment. Any support staff, you are more than welcome, except for Director Kirsten and our attorney, to head on out. Thank you. Public comment. Clerk Barry, are there any public comments submitted? We'll give her a minute.
Just give me a moment just to refresh the inbox, just to ensure that we have no public comments. Mr. Supervisor, we have no public comments submitted via our email inbox.
Seeing no public comments, we will move on to item 10, board comment. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. A couple of things that I wanted to address. First, since I kind of closed the last comments with my appreciation for the communication, whether it be the GFL notice to suspend compost pickup and then the quick turnaround with the compost yard waste will be picked up. I want to thank you for the communication that was extended to the board. I want to thank you for your stewardship of the township through this crisis. There's been a lot of very good information that has been dispensed. As I told you publicly and privately, this is not a time for some of the division and some of the things that have greatly caused conflict in the past. It doesn't mean that we won't have spirited debate, and I think that we should continue to have spirited debate. I really didn't appreciate the tonight again it occurred, the frequency with which we called the question. I don't know that, again, in decades of political involvement and on various boards, whether it be the county or the township, certain members of this board to be so interested in stifling debate. It's concerning to me. And again, I don't like to see the gaveling. I don't like to see I understand that some members get frustrated and say, let's just have a vote, but it's deeply divided board. And we tend to vote 4-3, and if the majority is simply going to stifle the minority, that's not good governance at all. And we had a very spirited debate last meeting about whether or not we should have 1 or 2 meetings per month. And my thought was, at least if we went to 1 meeting a month, it'd be a 50% reduction in opportunity to spend. At least we couldn't spend money. And we seem to continue to spend money. And the concern that I raised tonight, whether it be the rubber paddle park or the previous vote on the acquisition of property, I'm very, very concerned about the economic impact that this coronavirus will have on this community. I'm worried about the long-term effects, and I'm glad that those who, and I defer to people on this board who understand finance in a greater capacity than I do. I certainly wouldn't challenge their assessment, but there's a lot of data out there, and when our treasurer talks about some of the concerns and projections, it makes me wonder if we should have a moratorium on non-essential spending and refocus our surpluses, whatever they may be, to taking care of things like our first responders. And there's a number of work from home opportunities for township employees, but not for police and fire. They don't get to arrest bad guys from home. They don't get to put out fires from home. They have to go into the community, and they have to interact with individuals in the midst of this, as the president's called, a silent killer. They don't get any relief from that. We received today, at least the full-time board members, and I thank Treasurer LaFata for sharing with me a letter from the Police Officer Labor Council representative talking about this very issue, issues involving hazard pay, bonus pay, whatever you want to call it. These individuals are forced to go out into the community and potentially expose themselves to what is known as a deadly virus, and then potentially bring it back home to their families. They do that. They knew what they signed up for when they took the oath of office, but certainly I think it is incumbent upon the elected officials to respond to their request for consideration of hazard pay or bonus pay in earnest. They deserve it, and we should begin those conversations immediately. That applies to our firefighters and our police for certain, and I would like to see that happen immediately. With regard to some of the other things that are impacting our community, which we have zero control over, is the clear overreach, in my opinion, on the executive order coming from our governor. We have a small business in this community, in particular one that I was, in connection and contact with, the nursery, Van Tom Nursery here in our township, family-owned business for decades, is positioned to be obliterated. And the leadership that was shown by you, Supervisor Acciavatti, with regard to the transmittal that was shared with the community as it related to lawn service and in our township's interpretation of whether or not that is an essential function was admirable, and it was courageous, because it was not consistent with the main sort of reaction from the order, and I appreciated the fact that you've made very clear that the safety and sanitation levels that could be posed by the lack of lawn service was an essential function. It was a good interpretation. It was a right interpretation. It was a lawful interpretation, and you were out in front of that very quickly. And I think the idea of our police department being directed to enforce these tyrannical orders coming from Lansing is appalling. We are really exacerbating an economic downturn here in our community, which drives me to vote the way that I did tonight. And I think that we need to come together as a board to stand up to what I believe to be real tyranny here, a complete overreach. The idea of being able to go into Home Depot and buy a length of pipe to fix a water problem in your home, and then as you're walking by the garden aisle not being able to pick up seed, or one post that I saw was the American flags, caution taped off as a non-essential. There's no science behind that whatsoever. I feel very strongly that our governor's deep hatred of the president has positioned her, coupled with an audition for a vice presidential candidacy, has positioned us to really be in a bad way here in our township. So while we may debate Weber Paddle Park and we might debate water rate increases, I think we need to be unified in our assertion that this tyranny of our residents must end, and we must do everything we can to support our small business and our community in a way that is, really appropriate. Again, differences tonight, but it doesn't overshadow the similarity and the, coming together that we just have. We have that on our board, and I expect it. I would also like to point out, I noticed that the background art for Trustee Vosberg changed this week. She now has taken down the schoolhouse, and she has a DIA print in the background. And I hope it's not, that print is something that I really enjoy. I think that print is entitled The Nut Gatherers, and I hope it's not her attack on the board. But it certainly was kind of interesting to see that up there tonight, and I know she has a great sense of humor. So again, I appreciate the debate tonight, and I appreciate the leadership coming from the township on the issues involving our employees and our residents. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson, and then I'll go to Kathy, or Trustee Vosberg in your painting. Trustee Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a couple of comments on what went on tonight. I did not. I was interested in campaign contributions, legal. Two members here when they're addressing the business of the township. I did not mean, Mr. Supervisor, to get you upset or anything like that. And I did appreciate the political science lesson on legal and illegal contributions. I don't accept any contributions at all. As a matter of fact, I returned one, and I was real proud of that. I fund my own, and I can sit up here as what I honestly feel is a fiscally conservative person. I do not owe anything to anyone except the residents that put me here. So it's something that I live with, and you can look at my campaign online as we can look at anyone up here. It's public information. It's kind of unfortunate. You are, I believe, a very, very talented human being and educated. And I say that respectfully, and I do respect you, but at times you seem to, I don't know if it's just a reaction you're aware of or what. I mean, if Trustee LaFata would have talked about the financial position of the township being beneficial in that he wanted to give a reduction or suggest a reduction in property taxes next year, I am sure that he'd have been accused of campaigning, and he hasn't even filed yet to run. About any of these financial or endeavors that the township is looking at right now, we have the figure, Mr. LaFata, I looked at it yesterday, it was 600,000, but I understand it's up to 1 million of our residents have now filed for unemployment. Is this just something that's going to pass in a couple weeks and everything's going to be back to normal? I'm sure I could go online and read something that'll support that, and also find articles online that'll dispute that. You ride through our township, except for a handful of big box vendors, which Mr. Joseph, they can't buy anything but food and milk in. You have 3 big hardware stores, and you ride by up there at 23 and Gratiot, all those businesses are closed. All those residents, all those employees, I mean, many of them residents, they have no income, or what knows what they have. Waitresses laid off from restaurants that may only be providing carry-out food. What's happening to them? How many of these businesses in our township are going to survive when this all is over? Show me an article on that we can look back and say, God, that makes us feel good. The federal government's preparing stimulus packages to try to float things. They're looking at another one, besides funding the Kennedy Center. Eventually some funds will get to our residents and small businesses. I'll keep it short here. I have a few other things to say. I'm sure we'll get a rebuttal here and a little lesson, but kind of used to that. But I think we talk about the 2020 budget is balanced, everything is copacetic, whatever the appropriate adjective is. There's no problems there. But the actions we do today could have a negative effect a couple years down the road here. We're spending now. We saw that with the police department. When this board took over, the only thing that saved some grief for this current board was the previous board. After the voters shot down the police millage twice, the previous board took $3.5 million out of the general fund and put it in the police budget to give this board some breathing room. One less issue. And I do want to commend Mr. LaFata and Mr. Joseph for working out the public safety and all the nuts and bolts there to keep it going, although probably the fund equity for the police department could use a little healthy thing. Anyway, I still believe this is time we should be belt tightening, watching these expenditures. We can always, I'm not saying I'm against them. Now's time, I believe we should hold on to these things and till things turn around. Thank you.
Trustee DeMink.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Regards to Trustee Joseph's comments regarding to the public safety idea and hazard pay, I am definitely in favor of that. A lot of departments are doing that in the area. I've already gotten word regarding that. Also, I'd like to extend a word of thanks out to all the first responders, police, fire, and all the nurses and doctors who are on the front lines combating this terrible virus and everything else. Everyone else stay safe and healthy. Also, I'd like to say thanks to the Vantham family, Carol, Debbie, and Danny. I know they donated a lot of flowers to police departments, fire departments, I believe ours, and a lot of other places because they couldn't sell their Easter flowers. So thank you to the Vantham family. Also residents, the high water, it's there. We do have sand available at the DPW, the fire station on Jefferson and Brandenburg Park. The sand is for Chesterfield Township residents only. We've had a problem, and I talked to Director Coddington. Some of the other area townships are not supplying sand. So I have been driving around when I am around on the weekends, and I talk to some of the residents and make sure it is our residents using the sand that we supply and it's not going to other communities. Otherwise, that's all I have. Hope everyone stays safe. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm in my office. I'm sitting on the other side of my desk tonight. The side that Mr. Joseph saw with the picture of the historic village was actually just kind of a made-up thing that I did. And I always wanted to try to get this side to work because I thought the background was better, and I figured out the lighting so there wasn't a glare. Yes, this is called the Nut Gatherers, and by the way, it is the most often purchased reprint at the DIA gift shop. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the economic impact of COVID-19 webinar that I participated in today with people from SEMCOG, the economists from U of M, and they talked about things I'd never even considered, never even thought about the impact of them, and there's major impacts all over. And what's really nice is there are economic indexes for just about every kind of behavior, every kind of purchase, every kind of consumer consideration. That's all part of this study. So they did record it, and they are going to, they included the questions that were asked of the participants, and they're going to make it available for further viewing, a broader viewing base. So I will let everybody know when that's available. And just this item about campaign finance is public information. Anyone that would like to see the campaign finance reports of the board members here can go to macombgov.org. That's macombgov.org. Click on register, the clerk, register of deeds, and when you get to that page, click on elections. And you can search for any report you want of any Macomb County office holder from the county offices down to the local levels. Thank you.
Treasurer LaFata.
First of all, I'd like to take care of the important part. Again, I would like to thank my staff who come into the office every day and physically present under the current environment to perform the tasks required to maintain the financial needs to keep the township running. That's very important to me. And because of that, I make sure I'm here every day when they're here to show their support. There's, a lot of financial data, and, Trustee Joseph mentioned it. There's a lot of things happening. Nobody knows when the end of this pandemic ends, when some things are going to start up. But there's a lot of data out there that's good data, and it's not going to go away. The federal government printed $2.2 trillion worth of paper, and the inflation rate has gone from 1.53 to 2.6, which means whatever you purchased for $1 last week is going to cost you about $1.10 or $1.15 today. So it's all relevant. Revenues, costs, it all goes into an equation that tells you whether in the real world whether you have a profit or loss. The other thing is there's actually, what was I going to say? If you look at the breakdown that came for the sewer increases, you'll see that if you actually read these things and all the pages in between, because it came in yesterday, I took the time, you'll see that they took a hit and they rolled back the projected interest revenue because interest revenue is shrinking. It's shrinking starting yesterday. So that's less revenue that the townships got coming in. There's a lot of financial data out there. Problem is nobody knows how long this is going to be, how long we're going to have factories and everything shut down, how long we're not going to have income tax and sales tax revenues. And I'm always on the safe side. I have a little nest egg in the bank that I'm not going to spend on a big ticket item or anything like that until this is over with. So I don't risk my money. I surely don't risk the township's money. And I still remember the day of the budget presentation when we only had a day to approve it. The only thing I heard was, I'm extremely confident that there's not going to be a correction or a downturn. And I think that has come and gone. Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a couple of very quick comments, some that are kind of clerk-related and some that are more board-related. Just to clarify, I'm certainly not interested in stifling debate or anything like that. I simply called the question this evening with the support of Trustee Vosberg for the intent for which that particular motion exists, and that is once a board member believes or a member of a body believes that the discussion has degraded to a point that it's no longer productive, then that motion is available, and it was done properly. So certainly was not my intent to stifle discussion at all. It's just simply when it seemed to be after almost 25 minutes of not productive discussion, and board members had already essentially said how they were going to vote anyway. I just didn't see any value in continuing with that, and so that was why I used the motion for the intent for which it's intended, or the purpose for which it's intended. Secondly, with regards to the COVID crisis and our governor's response to it, I could not agree and support what Trustee Joseph said anymore. He said it beautifully, and he's absolutely right. The devastation to which this governor's actions are, that is going to ensue for the people who live in Chesterfield Township in the state of Michigan is incalculable. And I don't just mean the financial impact, but the threats to personal liberties, the threats to our constitutional rights. Tomorrow there is actually an event that I'm going to be participating in. I'm going to be attending with some of our business owners from the township. I will be accompanying them in support of their protest in Lansing to the governor's imposition on a flea market. And I'm incredibly sensitive to that. Again, Trustee Joseph did a beautiful job of laying out the impact to our local businesses, and I will be with them tomorrow supporting their position that they are opposed to what the governor has done that has affected them, their families, their life's work, that's threatened to be lost. Really significantly devastating effects. So I will be there with them, standing shoulder to shoulder, or if you will, car to car, bumper to bumper, with them to make that statement. And I believe we're going to be caravanning up there as well. So we'll bring information about that as it occurs. Last, some clerk's issues. Again, we talked a little bit about how this is impacting the election cycles. We will continue to update the board as well as residents and all of us who are affected by this and how it impacts our elections. One of the things that we did talk about, if there was a silver lining to any of this, is in the event that we would need to move to a primarily absentee voter or absentee ballot election in August like they have done in May, it would significantly reduce costs. If that were to happen, or could potentially reduce costs significantly, because not as many poll workers are required, not as many polling locations would have need of various supplies. Everything would be less in certain areas and certain parts of that ledger. So elections may very well cost less if we do have to follow that protocol. I would certainly like to have a traditional standard election so that people can come to their polling location that they are familiar with, and so far that is in fact the case. Nothing has changed for August yet. But again, please continue to check back with us, and we will continue to keep you updated through our website, and I will continue to the video updates as well that we will disperse on social media and to anyone, in any means and method that we can. Lastly, for candidates who are interested, or individuals who are interested in filing to be candidates for office for candidates for office for August, the August 4th election. There are several ways that you can do that. You can do it in person here at the township. You simply need to make an appointment with us in order to do that so that we can minimize and mitigate the risks as far as contact goes. We do have a way for you to do that. You can call our office and speak with someone here, and they will forward it to the elections coordinator to contact you to manage that. You may also submit your affidavit to the clerk's department via email. It has to be notarized, but you can take that notarized affidavit and submit it via email to us. Now, you may also submit the petitions to us as well via email if you have collected petition signatures. If you are choosing to pay the $100 filing fee, that is something you will have to mail in or drop off in our Dropbox for the treasurers to handle that. So either that would have to be sent in by mail or into our Dropbox, because as of this time, although we haven't been in contact with the deputy treasurer, she's indicated that there's not any inclination for them to facilitate electronic payment of that filing fee at this time. So that would still need to be dropped off either in our Dropbox or via mail, but the paperwork itself can be submitted electronically to the clerk's office. Also, you have the ability to drop it off, the entire package, a notarized affidavit as well as any petition signatures or a check. The entire package can be dropped in our Dropbox here at the township offices. So you can also mail that in by regular mail. So there are multiple ways for you to file for office if you are an individual willing that is interested in filing for elected office for the August 4th primary. So I know there's been maybe some confusion. Many people who have filed for office multiple times in the past have been so accustomed to doing it a certain way and doing it in person or through their traditional method that it sometimes is a little confusing, perhaps, on how to do it this time, and I hope that I have clarified that. The bottom line is use our email. Please contact us via email or send your required paperwork in via email at election@chesterfieldtwp.org. Again, that's election, ELECTION, at chesterfieldtwp.org, and we will make sure that that is facilitated in a timely manner for you. Thank you.
Thank you. This is probably the hardest experience that our residents, our employees, our country will ever have to go through, and probably ever had to go through collectively as a community. I'd like to thank our entire township team, the DPW, Public Works, Fire Department, all the employees of every single department that are doing whatever they can to respond to this crisis and help residents, whether it's finding a way to contact seniors, whether it's making sure that our sewer and water and everything is running, in our first responders. We have been relentlessly, and I mean relentlessly, responding to this crisis for the last 30 days as a team. And that has included virtual Zoom meetings, some of which I've even are posted on our website. Every member of the team at every hour of the night trying to troubleshoot every one of these issues, such as hazard pay, such as which funds are going to be impacted, countless hours troubleshooting feasibility of each and every expenditure that this township expends, all with pushing the greatest value for our residents, and always trying to find a way to reduce this burden on our township. So the frustrating part is there's a lot of good information, and I mean there's just a lot of good information from our DPW director to our public safety director to my office that would alleviate some of the friction up here if we only could reach out and ask. And hence, I get frustrated because we have 7-member board. And Trustee Joseph, your comments to begin with, I found some of them very genuine, and I found some of them deeply hypocritical, unfortunately. We have a 7-member board. There's reasons why maybe Trustee Vosberg knows how I feel about this agenda item. That's because she asked questions to me and to the finance director and to DPW and this team who spends so much time doing it. And we all talk about it collectively as a team. You can know the exact same thing. We just need to start having those communications. It's no way to run an entity, and that's what this is. This is a business meeting in the public for the good of the residents of Chesterfield. Now, I'm going to struggle with this, and I see it now that we're a week away from filing deadline in an election season. I've been through election seasons in the legislature, and there it's handled very, very swiftly with a gavel. That's how it's handled, period. Bam, and it's handled with sergeant of arms. There is no politicking on state ground when you're in session. It is a business meeting of the government. So what happens? You defend your policy, and you do so with attacking the other guy's ideas, not the other guy. And you attack the direction, and you have a legitimate debate. So I am going to be reaching out and having a discussion, because what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, and I will continue to gavel, or maybe I won't once I've talked to the board. If you want to turn this into a campaign circus, I don't think that's the way it should go. I think this is a business meeting for our residents. This is the time to stand behind your policies. This is the time to have genuine discussion, not political bantering. And that means even at any level. So I'm going to have to do some thinking on that piece of it. No campaigning up here, period. You'll know it when you see it, and I'm going to struggle if people are campaigning from this position for any office. I'm really going to have a hard time with that. We are shifting to the recovery and reopening phase of this crisis. We are doing everything possible to lessen the impact on residents. It's still so dynamic. It changes by the hour with different rules and regulations. We got to stay to the business of the township. I'm going to back up 1 minute to the Weber Paddle Park. The Weber Paddle Park is a project that this township deserves. It's a project that this township, the path was set on that in 2014. It's frustrating from a policy standpoint, and this is the policy. I don't believe spending money on a project, securing the grant, shocking and awing the MD&R Trust Fund, and we're doing other ones right behind it with our Salt River and our Shoreline project to take advantage of these funds. Walking away from that investment, and that's, from my opinion, throwing taxpayer money away. We spent a lot of taxpayers' dollars preparing that Weber Paddle Park for development. And now we've got people that want to throw that away. It's a legitimate policy discussion. I don't... I'm having a policy discussion, and I do not, this is what I'm talking about, Paul. I do not, Paul, please, don't make me gavel myself. I do not, you are campaigning, I agree. So there's so many devils in the details here, and you got to stay to the policy. Changing direction and throwing away the widening that we just did off of Jefferson and leaving money on the table, that's where the discussion should be on the policy. And those policies will make their way out as this year moves on. Be safe out there. This is very dynamic. I'm expecting a whole lot of changes even before our next meeting on March the 28th. Our next meeting is March 28th at 7 p.m. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion by trustee Joseph. Second. Support by clerk Barry to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned at 9:15 p.m.